So I want to talk about moving forward. So today the numbers went up a little bit in Allegheny County, but for the most part, we've seen a 7-day decline across Allegheny County. And so I'm looking again to move to hybrid on October 5th. That was the goal that we established in August when we voted. And that's what we're going to do for the next month is plan and prepare as far as the administrators are concerned to welcome our kids in a hybrid model beginning on October 5th. But to accomplish this goal, there's a few things that we need to first understand. There's a community transition rate that's defined by the Pennsylvania Department of Education. That community transition rate is what determines what type of educational model we are actually permitted to have. So on August 19th, the North Hills School District was actually substantial. That at that point, the only model that we could engage in for academics was the virtual model. Again, since that date, our numbers have significantly improved. So we are now moderate as far as Allegheny County is concerned and the North Hills School District itself is concerned. And what that basically means is that in order to get low, moderate, and substantial, it's the incidence rates per 100,000 residents. Right now, we're at 30. So you can see in this chart, anywhere between 10 and 99 puts us at a moderate rate. And a percent positive rate at about 5 puts us right at the lowest level of moderate. So for us to get to low, and low would be when we would be able to offer traditional school as it looked on March 12th and before, that we would need less than 10 cases per 100,000 residents, and we would need less than 5% positivity rate to reach the low standard. So right now we're moderate, and so our educational choices by the community transition rate is hybrid or virtual. And so this is the first matrix that we'll be using as we begin to make those decisions about what model we should be moving towards when we get to, again, October 5th and really beyond October 5th. Because if we begin that hybrid opportunity on the 5th, and then days, weeks, months later, we see a spike that puts us into the substantial range, we'll be forced into a virtual model. So I wanted everybody to kind of understand one of the matrix that we will be using as we look to move forward. But at this point, based upon, again, what I saw last week with our students and teacher interactions, what I saw with our health and safety plan being in live operation, and what I saw with the numbers as they're being reported in Allegheny County and Ross and Westview, that we're really planning to move to hybrid on October 5th. That's not a decision that we will make tonight, but it will be something that will be a voting item at the next school board meeting on September 17th. Okay, so stay tuned because that's sort of how that's going to happen. Okay, so COVID-19 cases. I think you might know that we had 2 cases as we got to Saturday. We unfortunately had a 3rd grade teacher at Highcliffe that tested positive, and we unfortunately had a student at North Hills High School that also tested positive. It was presumed positive when we entered the weekend, but we were confirmed earlier this week that that student's test was actually positive. So we have a positive 3rd grade teacher, we had a positive high school student. Both are doing well. I believe that they're already through the sickness that they had faced over last week. So that's all good news. But I need everybody to kind of know and understand that as we even enter into the hybrid, that this is something that we're just going to have to deal with as we move through the 180 days of school. And that based upon our current state guidance, that in this situation, we would not have closed Highcliffe or the high school with 1 case. Allegheny County Health Department, which was really nice because I was able to speak to them on Saturday and get to really know and understand what our role and responsibility would be. But at the same time, I was able to talk to them about our health and safety plan, and they acknowledged the validity of our health and safety plan, that masking works, social distancing works, and that they felt confident that there was a very, very small number of people that they would have to contact through the contact tracing. And that's something that Allegheny County Health Department does. It's not something that the North Hills School District does. We have a conversation about activities that they're engaged in, whether it's a teacher or a student, where they've been, who they eat lunch with, who they go to recess with, those types of questions, and they take it from there. So the biggest thing about this is that masking and social distancing protocols will help us manage this virus when we get to October 5th and beyond, and when we have those in-person instructions that are happening. So just because we had 1 case does not mean we have to shut down. So this is the next PDE guidance I'd like to go over real quick. I've already explained that we're moderate. And so you can see there's a low, moderate, or substantial category on this chart. And this is straight from the Pennsylvania Department of Education. And if you have 1 student or 1 staff member and you're moderate, there's no closure. Now, there's different cleaning protocols. I did not put those on here, but I can assure you that our custodial staff was out here over the weekend cleaning the facilities that had positive cases. So they brought extra employees out, extra manpower out for those two buildings before we arrived back in those buildings on Monday. Now, the part I need you to understand is that if there are two students and or staff members in the same building and we are moderate, at that point, under the PDE guidance, we would have to close for 5 to 7 days. And then there's different cleaning protocols that are in place. And then if you have 5 or more students, at that point, you close for 14 days. So this is the chart that I think we're going to need to really know and understand as we get to October 5th. And we unfortunately face cases in our school district. And again, you can see at the bottom, the length of the closure is determined by the health department. So if we have 5 or more, it says close for 14 days, but they'll give us guidance and direction based upon the circumstances of the conditions that we're dealing with. Okay. So the one thing that I can say is as we get closer to that day to open school, and if we want to get school and keep school open and keep our students in school, please continue to wear a mask. Please follow social distancing guidelines. Wash your hands, practice good hygiene. Stay home if you're sick. It doesn't mean if you're sick that you have the coronavirus. You could have a number of illnesses, and we know that we experience those as children begin to enter school. And get a flu shot if you can. I know that once we get to the flu season, that it's just going to make this so much more difficult to know and understand whether the child has the traditional flu or they have the coronavirus or they have strep or whatever it might be. So if you can get the flu shot, I would highly recommend getting the flu shot. So what I wanted to talk about or touch upon now is the hybrid model. So as we're preparing for the hybrid model, we're preparing for students to attend 2 days in person and 3 days virtually based upon their last name. Group A will be students with the last names A through L. They will be in person on Mondays and Tuesdays. Group B will be students with the last names M through Z, and they will be in person on Thursdays and Fridays. And all students will be virtually on Wednesdays. The asterisk is just telling us that adjustments will be made on weeks that there are scheduled days off. So for example, when we get to right around the election, Monday and Tuesday are traditionally in-service days because we use our buildings for the national elections. So that leaves us a 3-day week. So that week would be 1 day virtual, 1 day would be Group A, 1 day would be Group B. And we'll post a calendar as we get closer to that hybrid date, and probably at our next school board meeting, you'll be able to see a calendar as to what those A-B days look like, at least through the first semester as we get through the multiple holidays that we're about to experience. I want everybody to kind of know and understand that all operational models that have in-person instruction will follow our traditional building start and end times with our traditional transportation schedules. And then as we move to the hybrid model, lessons for virtual students will be streamed live. They will be synchronous. The students will be basically entering the teacher's classroom through the Zoom link. They will be working remotely and be able to watch live classroom lessons in Zoom, but all interactions with the teacher will not occur live. Any interactions will be asynchronous through Google Classroom if you're in the virtual environment while we are in person. Students will be assigned asynchronous and independent work on virtual days. I talked a little bit about this in the past, but it's going to be next to impossible for our teachers to manage 2 different platforms. So right now we know that they can manage the virtual platform at 100% because that's the platform that we're in. And we know if we had 100% of our students in a traditional platform that they could manage that platform. But once we split the platform and have half of our students in person and half of our students in virtual, the teacher is going to have to focus their attention on the students that are physically present in front of them. The students will have access into the classroom, will be responsible for the live lesson that's occurring, but the interactions with the students and with the teacher will be in an asynchronous environment. A portion of each day, like the lesson or the block or the period, will be live and will be recorded. So once the teacher is done with the lesson or the sharing of materials, and maybe we're going into a work period or we're going to do a discussion of some sort, then at that point the recording will turn off. So in-person students will then have time with the teachers, and that is not streamed or live or recorded. So that's how the hybrid model will look once we move to it. And in the hybrid model with our A.W. Beatty students, if A.W. Beatty is on a hybrid model at the time, the North Hills School District students attend Beatty on Mondays and Tuesdays. So at this point, we were hoping that we could move all of the Beatty students to Group A. It just doesn't necessarily work out as easily as I thought it did. It puts most of our afternoon classes with A.W. Beatty students present over the 50% capacity because of the way their kind of personal schedules work, with their mornings being completely Beatty. As they arrived in the afternoon, it really threw a wrench into our afternoon scheduling. So we're revising our plan for Beatty students based upon their ability to provide transportation to and from the school. So our initial plan is not going to work because of the total number of students and their individual schedules. So we're going to work on that over the next couple of weeks, and we'll have information out to the Beatty students as to what group they're in, A or B, and then how we proceed from there with their AM or PM schedules based upon how their hybrid works out of Beatty. Attendance is critically important under this model. I'm going to talk about this sort of at the end of this presentation as well. The online form must be submitted on each school day that a student is attending virtually. So right now we are in complete virtual, so we need to be filling out those online attendance forms every single day that a student is in attendance. Because they entered Google Classroom and they did all their work, does not help us to determine whether they are in attendance or not, because it's really two different systems that we have to use. We need to make sure that we have the student's attendance logged in PowerSchool. And it's really simple. It takes seconds to complete. So we need to focus on every single day that we are physically present, or that we are present virtually, that students fill out that attendance form. When we are in any of the in-person models, attendance will be taken by teachers for all in-person days. But if you are virtual on that day, you are going to need to fill out the online attendance form. Remember, we adjusted our policy to allow students to engage in remote learning when they could be in person and still be counted as present. So if you're ill or you're in quarantine or you're just not comfortable attending in person, you can still attend virtually and fill in the attendance form. So when we get to hybrid, if you're a group A student and you're sick or just not comfortable coming to class today and it's a Monday, you can attend virtually, and that's okay. So that's make sure that we are just filling out that attendance form. I'll give you a little more details as to why a little bit later. It's tied into one of the board actions for tonight. Our grab and go meal program continues daily at the 5 sites. We have one at the Hilltop and one at each of the 4 elementary schools, and you can sign up for your meals at the link that's provided here in this presentation.
Just to clarify one point in the presentation, so if the board votes to go hybrid beginning on October 5th, and a family is just not comfortable with that, they can just continue virtual from home.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, just know it's going to look a little bit different because right now that teacher is providing 100% of their attention in the virtual environment. And so once we add students in the classroom environment, it's going to make that just a little bit more difficult. But the answer to that is yes, they can.
Okay.
So when we're in hybrid, the teacher will be interacting with the children who are in the classroom. And so every child who comes to school gets those 2 days of interaction in the classroom. What the schools will do, the principals will work with the teachers to build a schedule that is already established and shared with the families, so they know what time to do the things that they need to do. Just like what we did right now while we're in virtual, there are those scheduled times so that each parent knows exactly when they need to log in. It will be exactly that same way when we're in hybrid. So the teacher might say something like, good morning, everyone. Good morning to our friends at home. Good morning to the children in the classroom. We're going to start our lesson now. Right now, we're going to be working on a grammar lesson. And then the teacher proceeds with the lesson. And the teacher is really almost like presenting almost like a show lesson where they're demonstrating things. And then they might say at the end of it something like, whether it's 10 minutes, 20 minutes, a half an hour, they might say something like, all right, there are lessons that are in the Google Classroom. There's practice that's there. Friends at home are going to log off now and go ahead and do that practice. We'll be back together at 10 o'clock. And friends at school, we're going to work together to do some things here while we're at school. So if a family chooses virtual, even during hybrid, it's going to, almost calling it virtual is a little bit of a misleading statement in some ways, because while they're virtually participating, it looks different than what our virtual model looks like right now. So right now, when students are at home, they're getting the teacher's full interaction. When we walked through the schools today, we saw teachers smiling at their computer and calling children's names and talking to them and really engaging everyone. If we're in hybrid, the people who aren't in the classroom will have a little bit different model. It won't look exactly that way because the teacher's going to be addressing the children in the classroom as opposed to the children who are participating remotely.